Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Brought to you by Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. Not a popular website, but you don't have to go to websites just because they're popular. You go there because they have insights that are riveting and different and fresh and not part of the familiar political cant of our day. My mother's 95 years old, or 92 years old, about to turn 93. And every day she asks me, so what's going on in politics? And it's easy to get into a long discussion and say why that question is kind of a problem, but I don't. I keep it short. I say, well, I say something about the mayor maybe or county commission. And of course, that's not really what she wants to hear about. She wants to hear about President Trump, whom she knows has been in office. She does know that. And she knows that because every day she reads the Times Free Press and the Wall Street Journal, I'd say cover to cover. And yet she's the one who's asking me the basic question, so what's going on in politics? The politics problem, the politics question is, I guess, part of the politics problem is that we have insoluble disasters. We have disasters of our own making. We have crises in economy, crises in government. And a kind of leech economy that is bringing the country to a precipice. If you listen to or read David Stockman, and who's an excellent writer, he is very, very bleak and is saying that there's a thunderous crash just ahead. And why is it just ahead? Well, because we have politics, and the question is, so what's new in politics? And the solutions that we have in the end are not political at all. They're not solutions for Chattanooga from national problems brought here, right? Made alive here, embodied here in Chattanooga in the way business does its transactions, the way government runs its show, the way Christian churches run their shows in Chattanooga. The answers are not political. They are local, and I'd say they're personal. Now, I'm a deacon in the Presbyterian Church, and would say that they are theological. They're theological problems that if we solve them if we solve our sin problem, if you will, in our relation with God, then a man, that would be you or that would be me, a man is better equipped to deal with the problems in his life, right? And also going beyond his own life, going beyond his private sphere of interest in the civic life of the city, the public life as well. Christianity, of course, has its great uplifting doctrine of the person of Christ and the ideas of sovereign grace, right, and forgiveness, and a social theory. Now, that's what a lot of Christians don't believe is true. They would hold that there is no social theory in Christianity at all. It's just purely a personal claim that we have on God because He lets us choose Him, right? And so we don't have any work to do beyond our personal sins and our dealings with our wives and children. That's about as far as Christianity goes. It doesn't have any claim on banking or warfare, on the economy, on the nature of corporations. It doesn't have anything to say about looking out for the environment. It doesn't have anything to say about stewardship. It doesn't have anything to say about legislatures, policing, warfare. These are all areas that are just, those are for the lost, right? The lost will deal with those things and preoccupy themselves with that as we Christians wait for the final trump and Christ's return. We're waiting for Christ's return, and there's nothing we can do here. Why polish the brass on a sinking ship? And that whole American Baptistic theory, which controls here, it is controlling in Chattanooga. I will have you know that. It sees no work for the Christian man in any of the questions that we deal with every day here on the David Tulis Show. And I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time here in Chattanooga. We're live at 12:40 a.m. and FM 92.7, and also on FM 95.3 HD4. That's high definition 4. You can find us there. Also on your smartphone, just get the radio app. It's called TuneIn Radio, and make us your favorite. And whenever you tap that icon on your phone, you can hear Sean Hannity, who's at 3. You can hear Colin Cowherd. We've got Alex Jones and a great morning newscast with America's First News, and live local newscast as well. And my goal is to explore some of the questions that we have and give you, my listener, or the reader at Nooganomics.com, an alternative analysis, a different analysis than what you're going to get from the press, that what you're going to get from conversation at the tavern, right, or at the restaurant, or even at church. I think we have made many compromises, and the rationalist Enlightenment ideas that impregnated Christianity and weakened it. I use these concepts as a way of communicating with you, and that would be, let's say, in shorthand, the free market. The free market is an argument for the outworking of God's grace. It is, in fact, a system of grace, and the marketplace is based on the scriptures. The marketplace, the whole idea of capitalism, is based in Christianity, and you don't have to be a Christian to participate in capitalism. You don't have to be a Christian to enjoy it, to prosper in it. And of course, many people who care nothing about the gospel truth, they are big into capitalism, and those are the ones who are, you call them crony capitalists or debt capitalists. Many who are vagabond capitalists, Ponzi scheme operators, people who run governments. They are all kind of making war against God and against liberty and capitalism per se. But they're using capitalism for their own benefit, right? They're using industry, they're using business to prosper their skimming strip mining operations that are often government connected. These are cartels, all kinds of cartels, government-owned cartels, government-supported cartels, and many a public school is a government cartel. Okay, it is a business. Probably the largest business in the country is the schooling business, and we have that here. And Christianity has things to say about that. So the argument against these cartels and for liberty and your personal prosperity is based on the grace concept in Christianity. And think about it just for a second. You, my listener, run a business. You will fail in business if you don't copy what Christ did for his own people on the cross. Christ died for his people on the cross. He died for his enemies, right? Converting them into his friends. And so he thought about them. He thought about his glory and their benefit. And the marketplace does that too. The entrepreneur does that. If he stops thinking about his customer and improving his customer's situation, improving the product he serves, cutting his prices, making things easier for the customer, that businessman, that entrepreneur will fail. Okay, that he will simply fail because he's not done what Christ did for his people. And that's why I can say that capitalism is based on the scriptures. It's based on the grace concept in Christianity. Look after your customer, and you will make a living. Okay, you put bread on your table, and you'll have 4 walls and a door. That's the promise of capitalism, and many more things. You may even be able to buy a boat, right? You may be able to go out to eat a lot if you have some savings. And so that's what we want here in Chattanooga. We want to have a marketplace that's freer than less free. And my writing, my reporting is always in that direction. I'm not an objective journalist in the sense that I give both sides evenly. When I'm doing a report, I do quote everybody evenly and fairly and justly, right? If I'm quoting someone whom I think is in the wrong, I will certainly, by grace, have that person rightly presented, rightly quoted, accurately to present himself to my reader or my listener. I want to do that because that's just what Christ expects of all of his children, to be fair and just. On the other hand, I'm someone who, when I write and talk with you, my listener, it is for the purpose of convincing you of certain truths, right? These are truths about the market, truths about God's grace, truths about how state systems don't work. And here we turn to a couple of things that are touching on this housing market. This housing market question that we've been raising, and one problem we have with our day is that we always think that there is a state solution to a problem. We think that there's the solution to the gang problem. We think is more policing, right? Head banging policing of the kind Mike Steele favors. He says, execute drug dealers, put them all in drug, bang their heads, have street sweeps, have lockdowns, have street side pat downs and the like. That's what he argues for. And there are certainly many people who would agree with that, but that's a state solution, and it does not make gang problems go away. In fact, it exacerbates the gang problem and compels gang members to have this cohesion, this sense of necessity, this sense of outside threat, which validates them as gang members, right? They're validated on the police department gang validation form, but more importantly to them, they're validated among each other because we are being oppressed by the cops. That's how they view cops. Cops are just oppressors. They are the gang in blue, right? They're the big gang, the government's gang. So they have their state rivals, and then, of course, they have private rivals as well in the gang world. And these are turf-oriented, territory-oriented groupings or clubs of young men, sometimes of violent dispositions, men who, as Edwin Banfield mentions in his 1970s book on Heavenly City, men who have a very short-term perspective, right? They think in terms of the weekend, and they don't build relationships. They don't build out grace relationships with customers. They don't have that. They're not married. They're not men for marriage. They're not men for children. They are self-seeking, sort of navel-gazing people. But we have in our day, we have a culture of institutionalism. We don't have individuals anymore. We don't have families anymore to solve problems. No, we don't have those, but we have programs and agencies. Now, here's in today's editions of the paper, there's an opinion column by Edna Varner, and she's a very respectable looking person, and she's talking about toxic stress. And her headline is on the web edition: Chattanooga can break the cycle of toxic stress. And again, we have a program that's being started that will let these good ideas come to be. She's from the Public Education Foundation, so there you see her perspective. And her problem, her observation is that we have not enough children at home, not enough parents at home, and we have children who have ACE, which is adverse childhood experiences. So you have an acronymization of boyhood and girlhood in troubled homes, and so it's a condition, right? It's a condition, and we have to take care of this by another program. And the program she refers to is our early learning networks, and the new one is Chattanooga Basics. These are mentioned in her column. Chattanooga Basics, she says, wants to give our students a great start from the beginning before they enter the classroom. Simple day-to-day activities such as showing love, talking, counting, and reading a book. So those are 4 things that are part of this program to teach people how to do this. And people have to be taught these things because they've not been encouraged at any point by the county or the city or the state to have a personal life. Why? Because the state is there for you. The state has for decades, since the 1800s, the state has been there with the school system, the free public school system, which is largely constitutional, to save parents from having to do these things. They don't have to teach their children how to count or to read a book. Maybe showing some love, the state would grant that. Maybe talking, the state would grant that. But I highlighted one sentence in this essay that kind of suggests the problem. In a way, it's a problem that's hard to put my finger on, but let me try. She says, through the partnership of existing nonprofits and community members, every parent and caregiver will be provided with the essentials to practice Chattanooga Basics in everyday life. So what we're seeing here is a society, a culture of institutions. We have nonprofits, we have community members, we have partnerships, we have the state with its school systems, and we have innumerable agencies, innumerable programs in agencies, all that have like reading and good lunch program, after school care, you name it, there's a program for it. And at every instance, it's there to ostensibly and pretendedly to help mom and dad, or to help the mom, right? The dad's not there. And so we can change the process. We can change the outlook of young children, keeping them out of gangs. We can keep them on the right path. We can keep them in school, right? That's of course the big idea of public school, is that it doesn't matter what's taught there, just so long they're there, that's the benefit. Schooling itself is the curriculum of school. We just keep them there. We'll teach them how to be civil. We'll teach them how to be compliant and obedient and serviceable in the job market. That's the goal of schooling, is to get people to be pliably employable. And in a way, there's a certain kind of environmentalism, a kind of materialism and determinism in this column. And by that, I mean, it suggests that we have to, people are simply material, right? If we change their environments, we change who they become. If we change their circumstances, in the large sense, we direct where they go, where young people go. Do they become employees in a company, or do they become gang members? That's kind of the question. But there's not a spiritual element in her essay. There's not a touching on moral questions about, who is God? Who do I have a duty to beyond myself? That's not really part of this essay. It's really not even implied in this column. It's about 500 words long, and so the answer has to be: we have to manage people, we have to manage organizations, we have to propose outcomes, and get people to work into those outcomes, and get funding to support those people who are working their way into those outcomes. We have a society of institutions. What about just the home life? What about just home? Well, the program here is to help people in the home, right? The home needs help. Moms need to be encouraged to show love to their children. They need to be encouraged to talk to their children. And reading a book. Well, we have to have some books. We have to teach counting, some of the basics. That, of course, those are good things, and I'm glad to see them mentioned. But there is is there not a personal approach to any of these problems? There is, and my problem here is to say these things. It sounds like I'm condemning someone for making a good effort. Well, that's not what I'm doing. But I'm saying that the solutions are not administrative. They're not programmable. They're not by program. They're not by the school, and they're certainly not by the police. The police can't solve these problems, and the police have been laughed at for having pizza get-togethers with gang members. Well, I think that's a good thing. I think those are very good, and my caller, Mike Steele, laughs at that. He just laughs at that. He says cops should be headbangers, and the streets should be just cleaned of these questionable people. Well, how can you believe in a constitutional republic and say that? How is that possible that you can believe in constitutional government where every man is presumed innocent, and the state and the officer has no authority at all to say anything to a person in an enforcement context unless he has probable cause? How can there be this kind of cleaning up of the city apart from the proper use of the law? And my thinking has been in the direction of having, since I'm so concerned about police encounters, I read about police encounters, I'm reading law, and I'm looking up the definition of arrest, for example. I've been rereading that, and I've been putting myself to sleep on a volume of the Tennessee Code about transportation. My thinking is that if we can encourage young men to have a stake in caring for others, that's one solution. Again, it has to be by personal encouragement. I would think of Christian men who get to know members of gangs, who maybe adopt members of gangs or proto-gang members, and have that kind of relationship, big brother type relationships. This is what I think is called for, that those are local economy solutions to the police problem. The police problem, the problem of police trying to win these young men over and to make them love good and right and true. The police can't do that. That's not their function, even though there are very many personable officers, very many kind-hearted officers, very many generous officers in the Chattanooga Police Department. That's not their office. They're there as officers, right? They're called officers because they have an office. That office is not one of grace. It's one of the sword. They represent the law. They represent the state. They are about guns. They're about enforcement. They're about threat. They're about arresting. They're about jailing. They're about accusing. Police are the state's accusers, right? They are the accuser, the accuser, the accuser. That's their job. And to expect these same men now to have pizza with gang members and to create affinity with gang members, that's asking the impossible. That is simply asking the impossible. The work of drawing young men out is, as Sergeant Josh May explains, to understand how they got there, right? And they get there because, as the TFP has reported today, and also as TV3 reports today in Josh May's presentation, I think last night, or maybe it was Tuesday, they're drawn against because they identify and there is a place where they belong. They belong there. They're made to belong there. Where else can they be made to belong? How can they be convinced to think in terms of caring for other people rather than just caring for themselves? That's a work of the gospel. That's a work of telling people about the Lord Jesus, who is all about grace, who is all about forgiveness, who, though in wrath will destroy the wicked, for those he intends to forgive, he always is very patient. He's always giving his word out in the Psalms, in the Proverbs, in the Old and the New Testament. And he's working on individuals to get them to see that they can be holy, they can be true, they can be right, they can be strong, right? If you live in fear of men as gang members do, it's a kind of slavery. Rather live in fear of God and not fear men, right? Then you can stand up to the man who's abusing you, potentially. This is David Tulis.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.